Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the November 13th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting and ask if you have pagers, cell phones, or similar devices, if you would turn those off or silence them now, we would appreciate that. And the first order of business, Commissioners, is to approve the October 9th Planning Commission meetings, and we have the requisite people here to do that.
Move approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the October 9th meeting. Those of you who are there, please vote. Is that either minutes are approved? And now the October 23rd minutes. Again, the requisite number of commissioners are here. Move approval. Do you have a second? Cast your votes. We need another vote there, somebody. Mike? Okay, Janice, Jim, me, Todd, Lee. Okay, we got it. Those are approved as well. And continuances, JJ?
Okay. Continuance request uncontested. We have 3 today. Item 20, SPUD 792 has been withdrawn. Item 32, SP 473, request deferral to December 11th. And item 33, PC 10400, request been withdrawn.
Anyone come today to address us on those 3 items?
Move the uncontested continuance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, and they are continued.
Okay, we have several new requests for continuances. It's item 22, PUD 1563, defer to December 11th. Item 25, C6598 to December 11th. Item 28, C6632 to December 11th. Item 29, C6659 to January 15th. Item 30, C6675 to December 11th. And item 31, C6539, defer indefinitely.
Same question again. You need a new right-hand man.
I do. Item 31, and I've explained this before, we are in the middle, or not in the middle, we're towards the end of finishing the flood study, drainage study for Chisholm Creek Basin through Oklahoma City. We're about 2 weeks away from getting the final reviews from Adair and their staff. And this study, and you'll learn when we do have this heard, will have nothing to do with the case at all. We're not even in the same basin. Our project is downstream from the people that are protesting. They're just using this. That's a great tool. They've slowed us down for a long time. I'm asking that we get continued just to January 29th, which is 2.5 months. We should have everything done. Just that request.
That's fine, and if you don't, we'll just continue it again.
Thank you.
As needed.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Move the additional request changing the indefinite deferral to January 29th.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the additional continuances. Cast your votes, and those are approved. Any continuance requests from the public today? If not, we'll go to the consent docket.
Consent docket, items 1 through 7. Item 1 is PUD SP 1508. Item 2, CE 895. Item 3, ABC 821. Item 4, ABC 822. Item 5, ABC 823. Item 6, C6645. And item 7, C6670.
Anyone today interested in items 1 through 7 on our agenda?
Move approval of the items on the consent docket.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Cast your votes, and it is approved.
First item for public hearing is item 8, PUD 1562, application by Shaz Investment to rezone 12100 South Rockwell Avenue.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Jason Spencer. What we have is a PUD that would allow half-acre lot as our minimum lot size. And we have a situation where when you look around, I think there was some initial concern about maybe some compatibility. what we did was we went and looked at the PUD to the north of us, and what they allow as a minimum lot size is 0.8 acres. We are at 0.6. The PUD calls for half acre, but when you look at our plat, which is the next item, we're right at 0.6. We feel like we're in keeping with the surrounding area. This is considered urban growth, so we certainly think that density as applied for is appropriate. There are a couple of technical evaluations that I would like to discuss. 1, 4, and it's labeled as 6, but 1, 4, and 6, there's no 5, we are in agreement with. 2 and 3, we are essentially in agreement with. Conceptually, I would add, if the Planning Commission would allow us, to modify it to add a sentence stating that our open space shall be at a minimum 2 acres. That is in keeping with the plat. I'll show you the rendering as part of the PUD and the plat, but it's in keeping with the plat. Is consistent with our conversations with staff. We did meet with staff this week, and they were comfortable with that addition as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Commissioners? No one signed up.
I just have an observation. Why aren't there sidewalks?
What's that?
Why aren't there sidewalks?
It's a rural neighborhood, and sidewalks are usually not found in rural neighborhoods.
What are your streets? Are they just with no curb and gutter?
Correct.
Just okay.
I'm not sure half acre really feels rural anymore. I kind of...
Well, what you find, I certainly think that half acre is rural. When you look at the base zoning district, the word rural appears in it. But when people buy half acre or larger, I don't think they want sidewalks. If they wanted sidewalks, they'd move into what I would call a typical single-family neighborhood with smaller lots where you have things like sidewalks, amenities, playgrounds, pools, clubhouses. They're moving to larger lots because they want their open space to be their yard. They don't want sidewalks and people walking through their yard. They want a little piece of, I guess, country in the city. So what we've applied for is certainly appropriate. It's in keeping with the other rural-type developments in close proximity to this.
Okay, Commissioners, no one signed up.
One housekeeping question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Box, you spoke to the TEs.
Yes, sir.
And you did not speak to TE 5 because there's not one.
We do not agree with it.
And I just wanted to make certain that was just a numbering deal on the staff report, and there wasn't intended to be a TE 5. Thank you.
In the modified language, we would ask to be applied to both 2 and 3.
Okay.
Then I'll move approval, adding to TEs 2 and 3.
Open space shall be at a minimum 2 acres.
Fine.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 8 as amended. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 9, C6671, preliminary plat of Rio del Sol, located west of Rockwell Avenue and south of Southwest 119th Street.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, again with Jason Spencer on behalf of the applicant. This is the plat that's associated with the PUD that was just recommended for approval, and we do agree with all of the TEs except for on number 6. It has a sentence, the last sentence of TE number 6 is an error, I believe. We did meet with staff on this, and the PUD does not reference this landscaping language. So we would ask that just be deleted, and then we agree with TE 6.
So you agree with the rest of the Ts?
Yes, sir.
No one has signed up.
Do you need your open space in the plat also?
No, when we met with staff, we're confident that the way we did it through the TEs on the PUD will handle it.
Okay. All right, then I'll move approval, deleting the last sentence of TE 6.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 9, deleting the last sentence of TE 6. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 10 is SPUD 793, application by Browning Capital LLC to rezone 829 Southwest Grand Boulevard.
I'm Rod Baker, manager for Browning Capital, and we came before you last month with a request for C3 zoning on this parcel, and after some discussion on that, we worked with staff subsequently to come up with the SPUD, incorporating a number of the items that were talked about in that meeting. And we agree with everything that's been constructed in this SPUD, including the site triangle, dedicating for the site triangle on the corner. The site plan that's attached is, we attached it. It's not exactly what would be there. It's a conceptual plan, but it's substantially the way that the lot would lay out. We ask for approval.
Okay, no one signed up.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Well, wait, Mr. Chairman, I'll have a comment on this one.
Okay.
I won't vote for it because you've got a 20-foot sign, a pole sign going up. And I don't know, why you need that, because you have a lot of visibility on Grand and visibility on Western, and I don't see any reason to have an 8-foot sign. The second thing is that there are no sidewalks proposed along Grand on your application, and there's no landscaping shown on the south side of your application. There's some trees on the west side, but no landscaping on the south side. And so those are the three comments that I have on this, and I can't vote in favor of it with a 20-foot sign. I would vote in favor of it with an 8-foot sign with a comment about landscaping perhaps on the south side.
Yeah, we haven't submitted a landscape plan. The way the SPUD is, we'll meet all the landscape ordinance here. So we haven't submitted plans for that yet, but we agree to.
The rendering, I think,
It's just conceptual. We just put that together so that you can see how it would be developed.
okay, but there weren't anything shown on the south side. That's I saw this. And
Yeah. I just wanted to assure you that we will landscape, per the ordinance as the SPUD calls for.
And what about sidewalks on the south side?
The city trail system runs right through the medians on Grand all the way
So
through.
that'll take care of the sidewalks?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what
Then
people use there.
Forget the sidewalks, the
Okay.
landscaping, but the sign's important.
The sign is important to us as well.
Yep.
And this was a compromise to do the 20-foot. Sonic across the street's got a 20-foot sign.
Right.
80 to 90% of the property up and down this street from 25th Street to 44th Street is already zoned C3. And if we would be put in a competitive disadvantage to all the other sites along the street. So
discussion.
And I think that's my point.
The discussion at our last meeting, and the reason there's a PUD in part is we had a compromise discussion on the sign height at the last
I
meeting.
wasn't here.
Well, that's why you can vote however you choose.
Well, I will. I mean, I can't support it with a 20-foot sign.
Okay.
So-
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd just make a comment. This PUD appears to be exactly what we
Ask for.
requested and agreed to at our prior meeting.
Right. Ready to vote? Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you very much.
And, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect for the committee, I appreciate the work that you did. I wasn't here, so I would have said something last meeting.
We know that.
Item 11 is PC 10401, application by Retail Buildings, Inc. to rezone 4335 Northwest 23rd Street from R1 and O2 to C3 Community Commercial.
Mark Grubbs, Grubbs Consulting, on behalf of the applicant. What we have here is just the acquisition of property around an existing store to put a new model. So we're asking for the adjacent C3 zoning to support their use.
This is a Brahms store that's a remodel or just adding some real estate to it. No one has signed up.
I know this store very well. I buy my milk there and ice cream cones and all that stuff. So I'm curious, what is the expansion going to be?
Have you seen any of their new buildings?
I know this store. I mean, they just remodeled it like 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Have you seen their new buildings?
You've seen their new model
Have
stores?
you seen their new model stores?
No.
Like the
Is that
one
what
at
it's gonna be?
39th in Tulsa?
Yeah.
Is that one of them?
Yeah,
Similar to that one?
39th and Tulsa, out at Mustang, at just off Mustang Road, just south of I-40.
But like the same rock work and the
Yes.
same, I mean, essentially what the facade of this one is, but that'll just be extended on to how you're going to redesign it, right?
Well, it's a newer footprint, larger footprint.
It is a larger footprint.
yeah.
Different,
But same, rock work and all that stuff would be, yeah.
Janice?
The question that I had, although I'm supportive of the usage of the property, is whether you really need to rezone this particular strip of land to C3. I mean, given the layout of the store on the property, won't this basically be used for parking?
We haven't looked at the site plan.
Well,
I mean, we haven't overlaid the site plan onto it. Brahms knows they need the extra footage to support their use. Even if it was for parking, it would support the C3 use. So if it was for parking, it would still be for the C3 use.
but the
And if
park-
it's a larger footprint, there would be a parking requirement change as well under the existing zoning.
I guess the concerns that I have are about outdoor, I mean, basically, are about outdoor impacts, lighting. There is some residential within sight of this property to the north, east, and west, and also about like outdoor speakers and that sort of thing.
The outdoor speaker is currently at the site.
Yeah, I know. But in a straight rezoning like this, we don't have any ability to impact that. And that's a concern for me. The residential area surrounding this property is, shall we say, fragile. And I would really like to see some limitations placed on that.
Say it again. Couldn't
I
hear.
would like to see some limitations placed on that.
When I drove this site and looked at it, the residential
Pretty far away.
is almost a block away. I mean, this is isolated right off of 23rd Street. And you can pretty much see that on our rendering, but it's away.
Everything south is transitioned to an office use, even though there's no...
Yeah, but that's across
Across
wide
23rd Street.
23rd Street. I'm assuming the residential you're talking about, Janice, is to the northeast,
Yes.
northwest.
Yes.
And that is really back there.
The church surrounds the property, which is who we're purchasing the property from.
We approved over my objection of EMD sign that's right to the east of the Brahms that on behalf of the church. It's on 23rd. Will that be taken out?
I don't know the current location
That'd
of
be a good idea, because Janice, that's a
It's the
vacant
church.
lot. I mean, it's all, you know, I mean, it really, and then across the street, there's the equivalent of accounting offices and massage parlors and beauty,
Barbershops.
really not very nice things.
I totally
there across.
understand. And as I say, I'm supportive of this use. I've said all I have to say on this topic, so.
Anything else? No one has signed up.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 11. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 12 is SP 474, application by Corbett Funeral and Cremation Service to operate a crematory located at 910 Northwest 79th Street.
Good afternoon, Darren Corbett, applicant. We have an existing funeral home. We're just asking for a permit to place a crematory on site.
Again, no one has signed up. Our past experience with crematoriums is if they're installed, no one knows they're there.
No one has signed up?
No.
I'll move approval.
A motion and a second to approve item 12. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 13 is C6676, final plat of Reserve National Office Park, located west of Kelly Avenue and north of Britton Road.
Keith Beatty with Ish & Associates. We've requested removal of TEs 4 and 6, and I believe staff's in agreement with us, and we agreed to meet the other TEs.
Okay, Commissioners, again, no one signed up. 4 and 6.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 13, deleting Ts 4 and 6. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 14, C6677, final plat of the Chateaus at Rose Creek, located east of Portland Avenue and south of Northwest 178th Street.
I am Chinagunda. I'm with JGVE representing our client.
Sir, can you pull that microphone down a little bit?
Can you hear me now?
Closer. Closer. Yeah,
Can you?
better.
Okay.
We can hear you, but this is being televised, and they won't be able to hear you.
Okay. I'm Chinagunda with JGVE representing our client. This is a residential subdivision final plat coming to. It's about 39 single-family residential lots. I have in the engineering comments, I have one concern in the water line plans, and they're asking for a 12-inch water main extending the Jim Murphy Boulevard along the north of the 178th Street. Actually, there's a line going, already there's a 12-inch line comes to the south of the 178th Street, and on the east side, there's already a cross across the street, a 12-inch line coming south. And our subdivision is on the south side of the 178th Street, and we're tying into the two locations of the existing 12-inch line. And I don't think that's necessary to cross the street at the 178th Street.
We'll hear from our Public Works Department.
Nathan Manwald in the Utilities Department. Regarding that 12-inch line...
Nathan, would you...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Get it recorded.
Regarding that 12-inch line, I wasn't here initially, but there was a stub that was brought up there to 178th Street, and there wasn't a water line on 178th Street yet. But as that line was extended for the Grove to the north, we now need that connection made to make sure we have reliable service into Rose Creek in this development.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, Commissioners, before we leave that issue?
Well, yes, I don't know if anyone else is confused by this, but I am. I'd like to understand it. Can you take us back to square one, Nathan, and tell us what's going on here?
Yes.
When I read these TEs, I don't get all the things that I'm hearing.
So whenever the Rose Creek development was developed, there wasn't a water line on 178th Street. So what they did was they brought a stub up there along, I apologize, I don't know, the north-south road, and it did end it south of 178th. Since the time when the initial phases for Rose Creek had developed, there's been a water line extended on the north side of 178th Street. So we would require them to connect to that line so that way we can get another feed into the development just to make sure we have reliability in case one of the other feeds goes out.
Okay, now I understand that. But what I don't understand is I don't see that in a TE anywhere.
I believe all engineering and...
It's covered in number one about the...
Number one, the broad...
All engineering must be met.
Okay. Now I'm catching on.
Okay.
And sir, what you're saying is you don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's going to cost us a lot more money to cross the north 178th Street And I think the development coming in the future on the north side, it should be asked them to do this crossing and tie into this line.
People who, now you've confused me. You want someone who develops to the north of this eventually to run that line?
We're on the south side of the
I know what-
170th.
And the line is on the north side of the street.
We're lying on the north side of the street.
And-
But we also have a line coming from the east and coming from the west, and we're tying to both of those lines,
And what size are those lines?
12-inch lines.
12-inch lines?
Yes.
Okay. Nathan, clarify that one for me.
In multiple developments, I mean, this is a large area, so you might have multiple 12-inch lines that come into the development. So we see it reasonable, and this would be a standard practice that they actually extend the line into the development. And if the line was there on the north side, we would make them extend further extent on the frontage.
Okay. You get it?
But the guys north of them in Rose Creek, whatever, where it says tall on our map, right? They're not connected to this. Are they connected to the line at 178?
No, they're not. They don't. I don't think they have an outlet to 178th, if I'm not mistaken.
Can you point out on the map
Okay.
where we are on both those lines? Pretty close.
What he's saying.
The new line is installed on the north side of 178th across the Portland.
Okay. Okay, and you're wanting him to run a 12-inch line to his subdivision?
Essentially for the extent of the right-of-way, yes. So that way, there's a 12-inch that helps feed the development, which also will help feed his development.
So you're asking just to the right-of-way and not under 178 to hook in?
I'm sorry, let me clarify. It would be the length of the right-of-way, essentially, about 100 feet under 178th to the new line on the north side of 178th Street.
And yet they have water on the east and west of them on the south side of 178th.
They are fed other ways. Standard practice, though, is to bring a 12-inch in to the development.
Is it a pressure problem or?
System reliability, make sure we have enough flow going in. We're more concerned if something goes out, then we're able to still serve the development adequately.
So it's partly redundancy?
Resiliency.
Or is that, am I overstating it?
I think it's redundant. So now is the person who's developing this piece of land that you have are here on today the same group that developed North Rose Lake Villas? Single developer? Is that fair to say?
May I answer that?
Sure, Gary.
Sure,
Go to the microphone.
Gary. Yeah, that'd be great.
Go to the microphone if you would. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm Gary Quick with the
Hey, Gary.
developers of the property. Simply speaking, didn't mean to get up here and get in a big hassle on this thing, but it just looks like we're paying to cross the street for someone else to develop. We have plenty of water on our side, and if there ever is a need for that property, it looks like it would be whoever needed the water across the street, it'd be their obligation to bring it across. We normally have to do that every other development we've ever done. Did you have a more specific question, though?
No, I think you answered the question about it's common. You own all of the property there that we're in that little rectangle.
Yes, sir, but we're south of 178th.
South of
We're
178th.
fine, but it seems like they're making us go across the street to help someone else. You know, I'm always try to be a good neighbor, but there's no neighbor there yet.
I guess my question would be if this was an imperative deal and important to connect, when the water line was built on the north side, if we were that concerned, why didn't we come under the street and connect them at that time?
It depends on what level of cost you want to impose on each developer. They ran the entire length all the way across to the other side of Portland. So they installed a significant portion of the main.
Well, and somebody installed water on the south side, too, that serves all these additions leading up to these last two little slivers up there on on the far north side of the south side of 178th.
Mr. Gale, so far, we paid for it all.
Well, no, I'm not saying who paid for what. I'm just saying it seems like if we have water on the south side of the street, then we have water on the south side of the street. We have water on the north side, we have on the north, and if they needed to be hooked up, I'd have done it at the time I built the line across the north side when it was easy to do, frankly. But
I appreciate the argument. It's just you're making the person on the north side spend money to improve the situation for the person on the south side.
okay, but this way, not to take Mr. Quick's side, but he's here, so you're making the guy on the south side pay for something that he already has. He already has water.
I understand what you're saying.
So why should he pay for it?
To make sure that he has water at all times. That's what we're looking at. We're planning for the worst case, so.
Question is to ensure the integrity of the city's system. That's why we make him do it. It doesn't have to do with who's providing something for somebody else.
I understand that, and that's why I posed the question, Janice, if that was the primary reason, of integrity of the system, when we built the system on the north side, why did we not protect the integrity of the system at that time?
I'm guessing it had to do with the cost.
So now we put it on Mr. Quick.
So the south side has more money than the north side.
Are we requiring something of him that we don't require of other people?
No, the odd situation is just that we have that stub there now, so.
So it's not like we're doing something to him that's odd or unusual or punitive or out of the ordinary or...
If the main had been on the north side of the street, whenever the first phases came in, they would have made that connection. So it's
Well,
kind of
first
out
of all, I'm not
place.
sure it's within our purview to make this decision of where we build water lines. If the TE covers it, I would think we approve this application with the TE in place, and if there's a problem later with Public Works, that's up for the applicant to resolve it. We don't do water lines, do we, Dan?
Typically, no, that's part of this engineering qualifications and engineering requirements.
That's what I'm getting at. We've determined the land use is appropriate, and we've done that. This is a final plat. I'm just not sure it's our place.
Meanwhile, we have two people signed up who want to address us. I don't know what we're going to do on the water thing, Gary, so I can't answer that yet. I'm not sure. Is this Sarah Moore? Is that correct? Yes. I'm sorry. Sarah, if you would just come to the podium, give us your name and address, and tell us what your concerns are.
Yes. My name's Sarah Moore, and I'm with Bass Law Firm, and we represent the Rose Creek Property Owners Association. My address is 201 Robert S. Kerr here downtown Oklahoma City. We respectfully request that the Oklahoma City Planning Commission deny the request to approve the final plat of the Chateaus of Rose Creek based on its name.
Let me stop you right there. You're concerned about the name.
Yes, correct.
That is completely outside of our control. That if you have a concern about the use of name, and if you somehow think it's your name that they're using, that is a civil matter and not anything we can decide here. We can't consider whether to approve or deny a request based on the name.
Okay.
We're sorry, we cannot help you in that respect.
And that's fine, and we mostly just object to this plat based on the name, but also because of the use of the Rose Creek area and name. Mr. Oster, do you have anything?
Sorry, I can't. You got to talk, ma'am. You need to speak to us.
Okay. I respectfully ask that we withdraw our objection then if that's not able to be done.
Yeah, you can continue to
Okay,
object, but
okay,
you
yeah.
just need to, you just need to deal with Mr. Quick outside of the Planning Commission,
Sure.
because that's
I
a
think-
simple matter.
Respectfully, you might make sure you state your objection to the use in the record so that you help assist yourself in maintaining the integrity of your mark. You don't want to withdraw an objection so that you can say you defended your mark at all costs.
Yes, and that's what we are appearing in front of the Planning Commission today to defend the mark, and we are hoping to come to an agreement with Mr. Quick or to seek legal ramifications, a legal proceeding. But
Your objection is noted.
okay, thank you very much.
There we go. Thank you.
And Zia Manir? Sir? I can't hear you. He's for 18. Oh, okay. My apologies. You're right. No one else has signed up, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to note that staff's report indicates the final plat conforms with subregs and the approved preliminary plat. I'm going to move approval, leaving TE1 intact, and let the water gods resolve the water issue.
Mr. Gales, if he will not agree with that evaluation, you can't leave it in there. It's his application. If he wants to stand on his application, he does not agree with technical evaluation number 1, then your recourse is to deny the application.
Well, I know I understand that, but I'm assuming they're okay with the TE being in there. Is that correct, sir?
Pardon me?
Are you in agreement with the technical evaluations 1 to 7 in this staff report? In particular, technical evaluation number 1. Noting that technical evaluation number 1 requires engineering, all engineering to be met.
Yes.
And when you get to that level in discussing the engineering matters with Public Works, they are going to insist on that water connection.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that? No?
We just still do not think it's fair.
Gary, I'm not saying it's fair or unfair. I'm saying that's not something we decide, that's something they decide. Now, our only recourse, as Dan has pointed out, is a vote for the motion I just made with the TEs intact and approve your final plat, or we can deny it, delay you, and you can go fight that battle with Public Works and bring it back to us. I think it would be in your interest to get it approved with it intact, and now you have two fights the way I see it. You have a fight with Ms. Moore over the name, and you have a fight with Public Works over the water, but you don't have an issue with us.
I think you're 100% correct. I want it approved. I'll take my fights outside.
Okay. All right, we have a second. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 14, including all 7 TEs. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gales.
Item 15 is C6672, final plat of Valencia Park Edition, Section 19, located south of Northwest 192nd and east of May Avenue.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers representing the developer. I've read the staff report and agree with the TEs except for TE number 3. I think we need to revise to remove the reference to Valencia Park Section 14. And the reason for that is even though that plat has been approved and the construction plans are approved, the developer has decided not to construct that phase at this point. So what we've done to address the connection issue, we turned in a change order for Valencia Park Section 16 that picks up that piece of Andalusia Drive that would complete the connection up to Northwest 192nd Street. And that's been approved, and that's all under construction right now.
That's okay with staff?
And that's good with staff?
Yes. No one has signed up, and he agrees with the rest of the TEs. So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 15, deleting the reference to section 14 in TE3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Thank you.
Item 16 is 6655, preliminary plat of the Falls, located south of Northeast 150th Street and east of Post Road.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. There are a lot of TEs on this preliminary plat, as well as the final plat, and that's for a good reason. This is a kind of a unique situation. The Water Trust has entered into an agreement with other municipalities to allow sharing of water across the city's boundary lines. The legal department is working on an ordinance right now to allow that to actually occur. And so this project is kind of at the front edge of that, kind of pushing the staff to get this pushed down the road so that we can extend public water from Edmond to provide fire flow and domestic use in this addition. So with that comes a lot of these TEs. In the preliminary plat, we agree with all the TEs with the exception of 5, which has to do with the tract of land that is just north of where it says I-2. That is a problematic piece of property in that it's got several oil lines and gas lines across it, and access to that tract is really not, from a residential perspective, is not practicable. It would push the house way back towards Post. So we asked to go ahead and have it removed, and I know Mr. Yokel had a problem with that, but if we deleted TE5 in the preliminary plat and adopted the TE in the final plat, we hope that that resolves that. And what that says in the final plat, TE, is that we'll either come in and rezone this tract of land to allow it to have access on Post, or it'll be incorporated into one of the lots before the plat's recorded, one of the budding lots. And we're agreeable with that TE to address that. We understand it's problematic. The practical aspect of it is that the developer believes that one of those 3 lots that abut that will probably end up with that tract as just extra backyard.
Well, that's not exactly what I understood your response to be when I got your email reply. I understood that this lot would be reincorporated before you get to City Council, and that.
And I'll agree to that.
But I don't want access on Post Road. That's just
right. Well, and access on Post Road is problematic as well because there's no visual access. So we'll agree to the either modifying TE5 here and the TE in the final plat to be the same. It'll be incorporated into the final plat before it goes into council.
And split up among the adjacent lots or shared with.
Yeah, somehow access from the.
That's yet another home site.
Correct. Yeah, because there's a limit in the PUD on the number of home sites.
I understand. I just want to make that clear. So, you got that, JJ?
It's a little confusing. I apologize.
Okay. That was my principal concern, Commissioners. No one signed up. Any other comments? Discussion? Action?
Can you tell me, sort of in 25 words or less, now a lot of these T's, as you say, relate to the provision of water from Edmond?
Correct.
What happens if that doesn't occur?
The TEs cover the fact that if an ordinance or an agreement is not finalized, then we'll have to come back and submit a revised preliminary plat with 1 acre lots, basically.
It'll be a do-over, Janet.
Yes, it's a do-over.
Okay. Okay. A motion?
Adding the lot back?
Adding the language to include the lot back into the PUD.
We agree.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve item 16 as conditioned. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you, Tim.
Item 17 is C6674, the final plat of the Falls, located south of Northeast 150th, east of Post Road.
Again, Tim Johnson, on behalf of the applicant, we do agree with all the TEs, and we'll modify TE number.
I'd modify TE number 4 and drop a portion of the last sentence.
That's right. And take out the rezoning part.
Yeah. NTE 4 after the word lots. and delete the balance of the sentence.
Correct.
Any other discussion, Commissioners?
Move approval with the modification to TE4, deleting the last phrase.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17 and amending TE4. Cast your votes, and that's approved. Thank you.
Item 18, SPUD 790, application by Ron Walters Construction to rezone 4800 South Sunny Lane Road.
Ron Walters, 8501 South Walker. Gentlemen, we're here today. We're desirous of rezoning the south side to allow for a mini storage project on what's shown up there on your map is Track 2. Track 1, we're asking for R4 zoning on it. The mini storage is, the numbers on all these things, 80% of the people that use these come from a mile radius. We have nothing but rooftops around us. We think there's a great need and a desire over there for this product. We are the owners on the project and the developers also. We are long-term investors. This is probably, I'm assuming in y'all's package you've got some of our propaganda and renderings and stuff like this. We intend to build probably a little nicer mini storage than most of the ones you see around because of our long-term approach to things. There is a curb cut on the north side of the property onto 49th Street. We don't have any desire. That's just for secondary access for fire. Obviously, we're just going to use a primary entrance off of Sunny Lane. We're not allowing any outside storage on the project either. These things tend to turn into some roofer parks his trash truck there or something like that, so we don't want any of that either. The little office building we're doing is probably a little bit nicer. So many of the mini storage you see nowadays have just kind of an office stuck in the corner. We intend to manage the development on that site number 1 north out of that building is why we've spent the money or spending the money that we are on the project there. So, do y'all have any questions?
Not at the moment. Mr. Manier, we'll call you again now that I've got you on the right case. If you come forward. And give us your name and address for the record, and then share your thoughts.
My name is Zia Munir, 2301 Out of Bounds Way. I'm appearing for HMJ Property, LLC. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm appearing on behalf of HMJ Property, LLC, the owner of approximately 9 single-family homes just south of what is Tract 1 on the map. We believe that essentially this is an effort to fit a square peg in a round hole. We recognize the area is zoned as multifamily, but adding apartments and with the kind of density and with the decreased setbacks from 25 feet to 5 feet and then increasing the density from 20 to 26 will adversely affect the property owners to the south. What you'll have is a higher building, and essentially people living in that apartment complex will be looking directly into the backyards of properties along Southeast 48th Terrace, of which HMJ owns 2 of those properties, and several others throughout that in that immediate subdivision to the south of Tract 1. Our concern is that the existing zoning is adequate and appropriate given the suburban setting of this location. Perhaps in an urban downtown setting, decreased setbacks and an increased density might be appropriate, but we don't feel it's appropriate here, and we ask the Commission to reject this change of zoning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Manier?
No, probably for Mr. Walters.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I couldn't tell, Ron, from your diagram, to his point with respect to the structures on the south, how do your buildings set on the lots on Tract Tract 1 because I'm somewhat sympathetic to that
I'll be particularly candid about the Tract 1. You know, we seem to have, we just asked for a straight R4 zoning and turned in some preliminary plans for it. You know, we seem to have the ability in Oklahoma City here every generation to overbuild apartments.
Yeah.
Which it appears that we're in, to me, in that mode again, even though we are growing and we're all excited about that. We don't have any specific plans for apartment designs on that. We were just looking to achieve the zoning along with the other project. At this point, I have no problem. To the east side of us and the north side of us, frankly, it's apartments and it's parking lots. The south side is residential. I have no problem, you know, agreeing to a 25-foot, you know, setback there if that would keep the peace. And as for the density of being versus it previously was zoned for 20 units an acre. I have no problem, you know, sticking with the 20 units per acre zoning for that matter either. So.
Mr. Menier, does that satisfy you if there's 25-foot setback on the south side toward your properties and the density remains at 20 units, which is what it is now? Okay. Thank you.
But I think, Mr. Chairman, there's another issue, and that's the height of the buildings, too. We have done this over and over again on buildings that are adjacent to a residential area, that whatever windows there are, you can't, they're opaque. I mean, you know, you can't look out at them, and you can't, there's no visibility to look out the windows from the south. And it's a 3-story building, so it is going to tower over. Going back 25 feet is better, but they're still going to be really tall. And then looking down on the backyards, I can't agree to this unless you agree that those windows.
I have no problem with that at all. Actually, you know, it is a very, very small site. To try just out of default, our apartments are going to be. There is apartments in the area. There's cheap apartments and there's some bad apartments and there's some decent apartments over there too. But just the fact that our apartments are going to be new, they're obviously going to be nicer and more expensive. The project is complicated. What we're leaning toward is more of a central courtyard, you know, type of affair that everything looks into that. So what we'll probably end up with, if we have to go at a 25-foot setback on the south side, will be parking over there. But I have no problem limiting
with the agreement of the
visibility.
setback, and then the agreement where there's no visible windows looking down on those backyards.
We can do that.
You agree to that?
Yes, sir.
So that's my comment on the apartments. But on the storage facility, I see the renderings that you've done for that, and these are all hip roof. I have a bit of a concern about the materials that you said that you want to use, concrete blocks that EIFS staff.
No, that was a little long. What we plan on doing, I'm sure Plan Review is going to get their pound of flesh from me before this is over, but the product that we're actually planning on using, y'all have seen it on some of the new mini storages, it's a stucco type of finish. They are a metal structure building with and it looks to me like a stucco. It's a colored stucco. It's a permanent type of finish. The main office out front will have a full brick veneer on it.
That'll be brick, and then there's fencing all around for where the residential areas are.
Yeah, and we plan on using, you know, I hate ugly fence. I hate ugly falling down. I hate bowing fence. You know, we'll use a steel T-post with 1x4s with a top cap and a rail all along it. Around the office up front, we've got brick columns and wrought iron just to keep some visibility or make it a little more attractive from the street.
And then thirdly, on the signage, the TE on this application is requiring you to agree to an 8-foot monument sign.
We have no problem with that. I can live without the pole signs. Pole signs and telephone poles, as far as I'm concerned, are the demons of the landscape, you know. So.
Good. Those are my comments.
Ron, we caught you on a good day.
Excuse me?
We caught you on a good day.
I'm sorry. You know, I get along with a lot of people most days. You know?
Okay, Commissioners, anything else?
No. Do we need to make record of all this agreement that's been done? So I'm not sure where to start.
Let me take a run at it.
Okay, go ahead.
Move approval of the application, noting in the apartment tract that density will be reduced to 20 units per acre. Anything overlooking the residential areas will not have clear glass windows, opaque windows, or no windows. on the mini-storage side.
Setback.
South setback on,
The setback will be 25 feet, and then going to the mini-storage side, the signage will be an 8-foot monument sign, and the material will be, as you indicated, I believe that was it.
Right.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 18 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 19, Spud 791, application to rezone 12121 Southwestern Avenue from C3 Commercial to a new spot.
I just saw Mr. Allen in here, and he's gone. Mr. Allen, you're up.
My name is Charles Allen, Allen Engineering. Ali Yabadi is here also. He's the owner of the property. We're asking for the spud to be approved today. For the main reason is Ali wants to build some office warehouses on the east side of the property. With that, we don't have the C3 zoning that we have right now doesn't allow that. We'd like to build the office warehouse. We're in agreement with all the technical evaluations, except we'd like to possibly discuss the 30% EFS. The majority of, all of the front of the building on the Western Avenue there is EFS. We're probably going to put rock on the lower half of it, but the upper half is going to require about a 50% EFS.
And is that what will face the residential areas to the west and particularly?
No, what faces the west to the residential is metal building, garage doors.
Well, but, I mean, on your property, what's going to face, I mean, are there going to be backs of warehouse office buildings facing those homes, or what are we going to look at?
Yes, warehouse.
And the material on that side be the same?
Metal siding.
50% brick and?
No, I'm talking about what's facing western, the retail building, building C.
Well, I know what you're talking about facing western. I'm thinking more about what's facing the duplexes to the west. I mean, we've got residences there. What are those people going to be looking at?
Metal building.
Although we're gonna do quite a bit of landscaping back there, put some tall trees to prevent them from the view of the duplexes. That behind our building is going to be quite a bit of trees along the ways, so they wouldn't not have the total view of the middle building. Although their backyard is facing back of our building.
Right. I understand where they'll be situated. That was why I asked the question.
Are these single-story structures on the west side?
Yes.
And building height is, I'm sorry, Charles, how tall is, what's the building height on the?
Maximum of 35 foot.
Pardon me?
The maximum is 35 foot in the spud. The other item we noticed on the site plan is we've got two dumpster enclosures on the west side that are closer than 50 feet to the property line. We can probably make those work, but if we can discuss those and add a TE on those, we'd like to entertain that, I guess.
Could you tell me again about what you said about dumpsters?
We've got two dumpsters on the west side that are closer than 50 feet to the residential.
Yeah,
property.
I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
That's in their backyard.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, going back to the comment just made about landscaping along the west side between the warehouses and the duplexes, our staff report indicates that the landscaping will just be pursuant to the ordinance at time. So you perhaps want to give some of these comments some thought, take a continuance and come back with a modification, or, it sounds like we're not going to be able to come up with a landscape plan today. It sounds like we may or may not have a dumpster issue. This may need a little more work.
Well, I think if that's the case, I mean, we'll agree to all 3 TEs and ask for approval.
Well, I think we're looking for a commitment that's greater than the ordinance with respect to the landscaping on the west.
We've actually already submitted for a building permit. The reason we're here is because we're trying to put, office warehouse use, and we've already submitted a landscape plan with a 5-foot landscape buffer and...
5 foot?
Yes. That's all that's required.
That's all that's required, but this is now a spud. That changes the rules. We have 2 people who signed up, and we need to hear from them.
Okay.
Linda Bull is first. If you would come up, please.
Go, Parmer.
And if you would give us your name and address and pull the microphone down so we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Linda Bull. I live at 12020 Briar Lake Manor. That is directly behind West, almost to the corner where the tire sale deal is. It's Goodyear. Mr. Allen has been by my house, and him and I have had some discussions, the engineer for the owner. And we have drainage problems as it is. I've lived there for almost 29 years. And the house just directly south of me, we've had drainage problems. Goodyear was, they have a flume that goes directly on my property, that drains off onto my property. I have not flooded, but the home next to me has flooded several times. On down the path, we have houses that have flooded. And we have drains that go out to the street. Now, when this is built, the land is higher than our property is. And when this is built, there's going to be some substantial flooding unless there's a drainage or some type of system put in there along that path of this that's going in. As long as I have lived there, it's just been vacant land. Therefore, we haven't gotten the real floods, but we feel that if something's put in back there, then there needs to be something done to our drainage. And thank you very much for not putting garbage cans in my backyard.
Well, the situation with respect to drainage is a little bit like the conversation we had on an earlier case where they were talking about what do we do to connect water lines or don't we, and you listened to that discussion. We have a drainage ordinance. Mr. Allen and his client will be required to comply with it, and essentially it says that after the site is developed, there should not be any greater amount of runoff than exists today. So they would be required to make their... Now, if there are problems today, that's due to topography and so forth, probably. And if you say this property is higher than the property to the west, they're going to have to address runoff as they do their engineering plans for the site. So, I mean, we can't, I mean, our Public Works Department determines that under the zoning ordinances, just like they do water connections with respect to the water requirements as well. So that's, we hear that from time to time, but that's not something we can fix here.
But I want you to hear me today.
We hear you, and we thank you for coming down.
We
And
can
I do have
also,
another-
can't we request that staff pay special attention to this application when they do see it to make sure that whatever problems exist currently are not exacerbated?
No, that's their job. We can say, please follow the ordinance.
Well, in that regard, though, and this is really a question for Mr. Allen, we have some rather detailed development plans attached to our staff report, and I'll just ask, in developing these plans, have you guys addressed the drainage and water going to the west toward these deals? I assume you have, but
Yes, we have. Actually, with this development, all the water is going to be taken to the south. The only water that would still drain to the west would be the 5-foot landscape buffer. So if we need to make that landscape buffer wider or whatever we need to do, we can do that. I mean, it's just, we can't control that little strip of land. It's obviously draining that direction now, but the runoff from the Goodyear Tire Center will end up coming onto our parking lot and will be conveyed all the way to our south.
Okay, so all of your rooftop parking lot type drainage is being taken to the south?
South property line, yes.
Okay.
So I think
Did you hear that, Mrs. Bull?
It doesn't go south, okay?
Well, but he's going to make it go south, is what he's saying.
It's going to redirect it away from your property.
And that's why I asked you if you heard that, because you're the one that's going to be there watching.
That I am.
Okay.
And my other issue is, when that water flows south, we have a creek that goes down there. Mr. Alley sold property to a complex behind us where the big apartment complex dumps down into that creek, so-called creek, which, I didn't agree with that, but it happened. And we talked about the creek and it was going to run there. The only thing is, the creek never gets maintained since that happened, so it's all grown up and it has stagnant water. And so now we have another building coming in that's going to drain south into the creek, and then we have, the creek's never cleaned out because it has a bunch of stuff in it since apartments were built. So we have many problems there, but thank you very much, and I really hope the 5 foot of easement that they really are not considering, because it doesn't have anything to do with them, but that 5 foot of easement that's left there, I sure hope that the water doesn't get dumped on us.
Well, we do too, and Mr. Allen will be watching.
Duplexes there that's going to take on the water.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Evans? Mr. Evans, do you have something additional for us?
Yes.
What's your name and address, please?
Huh?
Your name and address, please.
Charles Evans. I own 7 of the duplexes in that addition there. So the misconception of this whole thing is people think the water goes to the south, but it doesn't. All the water goes west. I've seen water in them yards 18 inches deep. Matter of fact, some of the buildings already have had water in them. I'm concerned when we add more rooftops and more concrete and do nothing to build a levee or whatever it takes to stop the water from coming west, a little 5 foot easement is not going to do it.
Well, Mr. Allen is going to have to engineer something.
I don't think anybody realizes how much that land slopes to the west.
Well, some of the natural sloping is not his problem. It's just.
And one of my other main concerns is, within 15 feet of our backyard, back door, we're going to have 35-foot tall buildings right behind us. I mean, the way it's proposed, even the dumpsters are right in my backyard. So that's my main concerns.
Okay, thank you.
I have some comments about the uses and where they're located, if I could. I see this asterisk which says location is limited to the east 200 feet, which I assume will be the little L part, right?
Correct.
But which applies then to convenience sales and services, moving down toward page 2, does not apply to, and then eating establishment drive-in, does not apply to eating establishments fast food, does not apply to eating establishments sit-down alcohol not permitted, doesn't apply to payday loan, title loan agencies, personal services general, personal services restricted, consumer services, research services, retail sales and services general, retail sales and services pawn shops. So I'm concerned about how those moving back up to the west in the west side of the PUD. It's not likely, but I guess there's nothing to say that you couldn't do something different in there. So I don't think that's particularly well thought out, at least with respect to those uses in the application.
The uses that you're talking about is that you see is that land that I'm asking for rezoning. It was platted a long time ago, and they were going to put in mini storage in that area. And
Not in C3.
Go ahead.
they were going to put in mini storage, but that idea did not develop. They just, didn't materialize. And then Super Target came in and bought all of that
Dan,
land.
but you're better looking, Dan.
And they were going to put a Super Target where the apartment is, where she was talking about, that the apartment went in. And that area was going to be used for a retail, which was the same height of a building, the same kind of retail that it was going to go right in that area. But Super Target decided not to do it anymore. So those usage that you're talking about, it would not be in that area, because all I'm looking for is for a small use of, like for instance, a small retailer that they do most of their business on the internet, or they have small services that people that would like to, they do services on appliance at home, and they need somewhere to perhaps park their van.
If I could interrupt, I think that goes to the point that I generally have about the application, is that I think it needs a little bit more consideration. Also, there's a bingo parlor that can go in back there, and I don't think we want that particular use on that west tract. I think some of these uses certainly may be appropriate fronting onto Western Avenue. I don't think they're appropriate moving back to the west, close to the duplexes, et cetera. And then considering the landscape buffer, and what I've kind of named here, I think you need to reset. I think you need to give this some more thought.
I think there are enough issues being discussed here today that are unsettled that you need a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Actually, until December 11th is our next meeting. Thanksgiving would be the next meeting. We won't be here even if you are.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can support a lot of the application if it just gets in a little better shape, and some of these uses are kind of segregated and specifically identified, maybe with a tract number or the east 200. I can't visualize what the east 200 feet of this lot is. I don't have it. So you can kind of give me some guidance there. I think the answer may be a little different than where I think you're heading right now. But I also think you need to consider your building materials back to the west, fronting those duplexes. I understand your west side, Charles, as you kind of go from the top part of the L there, that's going to be hidden by the buildings and the structures in front of it. I'm less concerned about what fronts onto Western there because it's got natural coverage. I'm frankly a little bit more concerned about what it looks like back to the west, to those duplexes and that residential. Just, that's me personally.
Okay.
No, I think the summary is the uses, where they go, where they don't go, the landscape buffer, the flooding issue, that you say you're going to divert it to the south, and that gentleman said it goes to the west.
Correct.
Address that, and what landscaping is going to be around the backside of the warehouses, the backside of the buildings, what's that going to be composed of, and the dumpsters, relocate the dumpsters. That's kind of what anything else. That's what I think the summary is, to come back in December.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I move for continuance until the first
December 11th?
December the 11th.
We have a motion and a second to continue item 19 to December 11th. Cast your votes, and it's continued. Thank you.
Item 20 has been withdrawn. Item 21 is PUD 1561, application to rezone 520 West John Kilpatrick Turnpike.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Brian Kuhn with you as always representing the applicant. Go right to the staff report. We have one TE, and we agree with it.
No one has signed up, Commissioners.
I'll have it. I'll move.
I've got a question.
Okay.
I mean, this is employment reserve, and the facility that you're going to put in, according to the staff report, is consistent with an employment reserve piece of property. The employment reserve layout land has been discussed significantly in connection with putting together the new plan and the fact that we need big areas to acquire or to attract big industry. Is this facility compatible with those discussions? I mean, it's really it's smaller, so we don't have a big campus kind of thing. But even though it's compatible with that, does the installation of a facility like you're putting together, the behavioral hospital, does that eliminate from the play of getting major industrial properties coming into Oklahoma City?
It's no different probably than looking across the street to the St. Anthony's Hospital that's going up on the corner diagonally across the street now.
Yeah, right. Right.
And it is just one piece of a larger employment reserve, and lots of other things that would meet that test would be compatible with this. I don't see an issue.
I mean, what I'm coming from is that we want big chunks, but if we piecemeal the chunks out to compatible usage, are we chipping away at the only ice block that we have?
Well, we are in fact chipping away at this particular site on the south side of it, but we all are also leaving open the whole north side with all the frontage.
Okay. Well, I have no objection to
just an editorial comment. More of a problem with employment reserve is as we use it right now, we don't have a mechanism in place to replenish it. And that's something that I wish we could address in the new plan.
Yeah.
Yes, I did make a motion.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve item 21. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
It's approved. Thank you.
Item 22 is continued. Item 23 is PUD 1564, application by Moore Investments to rezone 13505 South Santa Fe Avenue.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is the developer, H. McNeish. We have a PUD that would allow for a retail grocery store and fuel center on the corner of 134th and South Santa Fe Avenue. In our PUD, we did limit the uses significantly. We did provide for detailed renderings that I believe you've been provided. We've also got an exhibit here that will show the final design and build of the proposed grocery store. And in addition, what you have in the staff report is a detailed listing of each and every sign that we are asking for. And you will note that we have no pole signs. They are all monument or attached signs. Here is an example of the monument signs. And if I may, if we can turn to page, to the signage in your staff report, which is on page 4 of 11. As a starting point, we do agree with all the technical evaluations. So I do need to clean up some of the language here in the signage regulations, 9.10. Rather than the following wall signs, I believe that first sentence should just say the following signs shall be permitted, and then you see the detailed height as well as location as well as square footage of each sign. There's a point of conflict in the language, whereas right before 9.11 we say one EMD sign. We need to delete that. We actually have two. They're both on the canopy. They are the gas prices that you see on fuel canopies around the city. And then the paragraph right above the one electronic message display sign is also deleted per a technical evaluation. So with that, we would ask for your approval. We're not aware of any protest, and as I mentioned, we are in agreement with all the technical evaluations.
Nick?
David, could we go a step farther on the signs?
Yes, sir. We are willing to...
mention that there's no... non-accessory signs are prohibited, and that the only LED signs will be the two on the gas, on the canopy for the gas prices.
Yeah, we can add a TE where we agree that non-accessory signs are specifically prohibited and EMD are prohibited outside of the two specifically listed within our text.
Thank you.
Further explanation about the EMD signs, that's electronic message display.
Yes.
These, I assume, are going to announce the price of gas.
Correct.
And no flashing Roadrunner signs going through, stop here, flash, flash, totally static price of gas at the pumps.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I'll give you 2 feet.
Thank you. We might have ice cream cones. We did learn today that you like to go to Brahms for ice cream cones, so I don't know if they will have those, but with any luck.
Okay, no one has signed up.
Mr. Chairman, with the addition of the signage restrictions on the EMD and the non-accessory signs, I'd move approval.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item 23 as conditioned as to sign language. Cast your votes. And
Thank you.
it's approved.
Item 24, SPUD 786, application by Opening Doors Rentals to rezone 10,000 South Sunny Lane Road.
Hi, Commission. Seth Koenig here. I'm managing member of Opening Doors Rental. My address is 15724 Southeast 119th. Come here again. We were here 3 weeks ago proposing the SPUD for approval on our Sunny Lane, 4.99 acres there. I believe we almost had it approved, and one of the neighbors spoke up in to the north, had an issue with the building location, and you've asked that we go back with the neighbor and come up to an agreement to approve that. I'm not sure if we'll ever come to agreement, but hopefully we have come to somewhat of an agreement with that. Track A, which is the 1 acre that abuts Southeast 97th there. And what we have agreed upon was to have on that north side of Track A have a setback of 15 feet. So our fence would start 15 feet, that setback. Within that setback area, we would plant 6 red oak trees at the neighbor's request. Also on Track A, we would lower the building height of that building to 20-foot maximum. And I believe on the usage, we've taken out the payday loans, and also, let's see, animal sales service, no outside kennels, and also sporting equipment or sporting uses to be all inside as well for those buildings.
Okay. Mr. Groom here.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for giving us homeowners a chance to discuss some of these issues and come to a compromise. That really helps us a lot. We appreciate it. I want you to know that. On this setback, it's my understanding that that'll be actually 45 foot from the center of 97th Street, which would put that fence 15 feet to the south. We're talking about the same thing. I want to verify that that's what we're actually talking about.
Well, actually, the road easement's 30 foot, so it would be 45 foot from the center.
Right, 45 foot from the center of 97th Street, which would put the fence 15 feet to the south of its present location. Is that
correct?
Okay. Now, like I say, we appreciate being able to compromise, me and Seth and the rest of the neighbors, being able to work things out. Appreciate it a lot. Had one concern. We're all on water wells out there.
What now? I'm sorry?
We're on water wells on our side. Has there any study been done that shows what that water table will support? When I drilled my well, about 13 years ago, I was told by the driller at that time that water tables were dropping. And just curious if y'all had any problems with anything like that due to developments in our area?
Not in that area that I know of anyway. I don't know of anybody else that knows of any. That's a pretty good water table out that way. It's Garber Wellington. So it's and I'm sure it's probably dropping. But I live out that way as well. And, I've not had any problem. I've not heard of anybody having problems. So basically, all you're going to have is the restroom, isn't it?
Correct.
They obviously have to drill and test to make sure they get appropriate water flow before they're allowed to get a certificate of occupancy. So they've got to prove that they've got the necessary water and volume and pressure both.
Okay.
That's a city ordinance.
Okay.
Or DEQ ordinance, or both.
Did you read off the...
Sir,
we
you
had
need
some
to
other,
address us.
We had some issues on the size of the fence and all that. Has that all been addressed with all of you? All those things been put in there?
I don't know if we...
The height of the fence and everything?
Have to look.
I believe in paragraph 6, the site-proof screening, 6-foot fence.
No less than 6, no greater than 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boundary where it's adjacent to any residential use.
Okay. If he develops this other 5 acres on the back side of this, that'll have to be addressed at a later time. There were some issues about the private use of our road, which is a private road. All those issues are going to be addressed later on. Then we can do with that. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you all.
I'll make a motion to approve the application with the stipulations of what's been pointed out as far as setbacks and so on and so forth.
Let me make a comment before we go further. This is an application for a strip shopping center with a metal facade and the bottom part 30% brick. So you're going to have a metal building like a Star building with 5 access points off of Sunny Lane. This is, I'm not sure how that works, but there's these 5 driveways going into these 5. One of the good things is that there's not a convenience store. There's not what you typically would see in a strip shopping center. But it seems to me that this is one of those that we see throughout the city, is right in the middle of the block. Here's, you divide it up and you put a metal building and put a sign up and you've got it. And for that reason, the materials that you're describing, obviously there's a cost factor.
Sure.
That 30% brick, and you have a rendering of what it's going to look like here. Here's the 30% brick, and then you have the metal up here. Even though there's an oil well across the street, and this is on Southeast 97th and all that, I would really prefer to have some more attractive facility being constructed on this area rather than what you proposed. I like the limited uses because it's not conventional strip shopping center, but that's what you've created. So that's my editorial comment on this.
These are basically office warehouses. This is not a retail strip.
Well, but no, there's retail in the uses, John. There's the business support services, building maintenance. There's a garage, cleaning and repairs, light equipment. You can do.
That's not retail.
Well, you got to pay for the repairs. But I'm not talking about retail.
Granted, money will change hands, hopefully.
That's a business.
But
these are. But I'm just saying that the building materials are troubling, and the 5 access points off of Sunny Lane.
Well, there'll be 5 separate 1-acre lots.
Well, is that enough width? No. Does that comply with the ordinances?
It has to. They can't take access if they don't have the separation.
Well, in the building facade too, that's pretty consistent. In fact, there's a lot of buildings out there that's all metal. And, and I think it's pretty consistent and probably an improvement to some point of what's out there.
All right, okay. Those are that's just my thoughts.
Do we have a motion and second? Do we have a second?
I'll second it. And the motion was with the 15-foot setback and the tree,
The
the
landscaping.
green belt,
Yeah.
and deleting the payday loans and the animal sports stuff.
Okay. Cast your votes. And item 24 is approved as conditioned. Thank you.
Item 25 was continued.
Thank you, Mr. Groom, by the way. Thank you.
Item number 26, C6673, preliminary plat of Skyline Trails, located east of Cemetery Road and north of Reno Avenue.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Richard McCown and Chris Anderson. This is the preliminary plat for a piece of property that you will probably remember. We came through in our zoning request just a handful of months ago, and we are now ready to move forward with the preliminary plat. There are a handful of TEs. We do agree with, I'm going to say everything, but I do want to discuss 4, 6, 11, and then 15. On 4, it deals with... Yes, sir.
We're deleting 4 and 6. That's what you want to do. Is that not correct?
Oh, that is correct.
Okay. Jump to 11. Was that your next one?
All right. 11, we agree with that, but I do want to make sure we're all on the same page that, like the green line you see through the common area, it'll be a trail system. There will be normal sidewalks on right-of-ways and in front houses, but through the green belt, it will be more of a natural type walkway. So I just want to make sure that was clear on the record. And then 15, we obviously agree with limits of no access outside of any area that we are platting for access. The blanket statement just concerned me slightly.
Okay. We do have some people signed up.
Oh, okay.
Duke Henthorn first.
Before we do that, tell me again what it was you were saying about sidewalks. I didn't quite follow.
The sidewalk issue, I just wanted to make clear that obviously we're having sidewalks throughout along all right-of-ways in front of every house, but through the greenbelt system where it's a real natural, pretty area, the trail system won't be, formed, poured concrete.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
I just didn't quite understand what you were saying.
David, the sidewalk is an ordinance requirement, so if you can't meet the public works standard for that sidewalk, you'll have to get a variance. Okay.
You're going to tag team us?
We're going to do it. I'm Duke Henthorn, and this is Chris Henthorn. She's my wife. We live at 12600 Northwest 5th in Shire Lee. It's the development directly to the, that's north. That's correct. We actually, you see that number 11 up there on Kearney Lane? That's where our house is built. It's a custom-built home that we just purchased and had built for ourselves. It's roughly a 2,500 square foot home that we've got nearly over $300,000 invested. Now, this new development that they're proposing here, you can see the lots are substantially smaller, which I would think the population density be quite higher, especially since they're proposing quite a few duplexes and smaller houses. We're here to protest this development because we believe that there'll be a substantial amount of traffic that will come from Northwest 5th straight through down Kearney Lane to these houses. These people that will live in these houses will want to choose the fastest direct route to their house. And we're thinking this current plan is going to cause us a headache with a lot of excessive traffic and causing us, it's not what we really thought we'd get into when we got in this housing addition. We thought we'd have houses similar to our construction in size, but this new housing addition is clearly not, it's not the same layout or format or sizing that we think would be developed there. And plus there's a tremendous amount of duplexes there, and we're thinking, do people really want that many duplexes in that area? And it's just, we're opposed to the entire thing. If they would simply block that off and not come through that area, that might help us a little bit, but we're concerned about all the traffic.
Or Irish Lane. Irish Lane is the other entrance that goes into our neighborhood. If you look right there, there's a funny little kind of half triangle on the right of Irish Lane right there before you get to a home. That's a playground. So you've got like Irish Lane, and you've got an empty space, and you've got the lines of houses. That right there is a playground. And so you've got a large 466 homes, a couple of cars per home, and 62 duplexes, a couple of cars per duplex. So you've got a lot of traffic that will be going out right next to Irish Lane. Most likely, that half of this side would take Irish Lane right next to that playground for the small kids, because as you exit to the left, it's going to take you right out onto Highway 92. I'm here as a homeowner. I welcome them to build. I do. I welcome them to do everything they're planning, but I would ask that they contain it on their side of the property and not run this traffic through our neighborhood. When we built this neighborhood that's over here to the left on the screen, and then further south, those neighborhoods are homes 250, 300,000, same lot sizes. There's also a very nice neighborhood down further south that's nicer than our sizes. So we were kind of expecting the newer homes to come in to be conducive to that. If this plan here would have been the larger lots, not as many homes, about half of what it appears to be here, we wouldn't be standing here. But to have them come through, I'm very concerned about the safety, the traffic, the noise, et cetera.
And one last concern that they need to address is, we've noticed in May, when the rain came, that you were talking about flooding earlier and what you're going to do with the water. Curb to curb, across the street on Kearney, is flooded. I've got it on my cell phone if you guys like to watch. They're going to have to do something with that drainage. That water cannot come down the end of that street and hit any of those houses. So they're going to have to, their engineer's going to have to look at that, because that water's got to go somewhere. So I propose, route it off somewhere else.
No.
It makes a pond. The water stands in that street. Plus, like I said, it's curb to curb. And I showed you on Google Maps, you can see where it has eroded that farm, because that's currently dirt. It's 7, 8 feet wide, 3 or 4 foot deep. So there's a tremendous amount of water. They created that because all the way up the street, and you can see now that's a tremendous long street with people I can just see screaming up and down there. That is a flood. That's a river when it rains. So they're going to have to, and to help myself, we built a retaining wall. My house has a retaining wall the full length of my property, just because of the concerns of that flood water coming down there. Yeah, it's a 3 foot high retaining wall. So they're going to have to deal with that water. I know it's not my concern, but that will be an issue for them. We're just worried about everyone flying around that corner by my house and all the additional traffic.
The length of the road, we noted in the report.
Sorry?
The length of the street proposed as it would connect onto Kearney. When we went through your paperwork, your reports that you had, it's listed in that paperwork there. There was a 1,500-foot kind of restriction that they wanted them to follow, and this would exceed that. We'd also like to note, it appears, is there anyone else here to protest? So it appears that the neighbors in Ridgegate do not have a problem with this development, so we do not have a problem with them exiting through Ridgegate. We're just asking that you don't exit through the Shire Lee addition.
Well, there are a couple of things I can tell you in response to your thoughts. One, our zoning and master plan encourages a variety of housing types, and we don't have any control if someone is complying with our zoning ordinances, particularly as to what size house they can build or what price range it can be in. If it's zoned essentially R1 residential, there's a range of house sizes that appear in those zoning categories, and they can be anything from, in some cases, starter homes to very elaborate homes. And we also, as a policy in the city, encourage connectivity between neighborhoods and across sections of land for safety reasons and efficiency of travel reasons both. If it's hard for public safety people, police and fire and so forth, to get in and out of neighborhoods because we limit the access points, the day you call 911 and you want someone at your doorstep as fast as possible, if you close neighborhoods off, you make it harder for those people to respond when you need them. So we require the kinds of connectivity that you see here running north and south and east and west out of subdivisions like this and yours. And when yours was platted, you had connections to the south, including right next to your lot. And that was there when you bought your house. And that was there intentionally so that when something was built south of you, there would in fact be a direct connection. And that was intentional and part of city planners. So,
And I understand the connectivity and the safety issues. Right now, the proposed plat is extremely densely packed. So that's where my concern comes in, is that we have a large number of people now going to be flooding out of our street.
you're going to get more traffic as more development occurs around you. There's no question about that. I mean, if you move in and you're adjacent to vacant land, that is eventually going to be developed, and you're going to expect that more people will be around you at some point. And if somebody is complying with our zoning regulations or they've got the approved zoning, as long as they meet those requirements, some neighborhoods are more dense than others, and they abut each other like that all over the city.
Could we expect the city to put a stop sign? Because that is going to be a long street. And so
that'll be addressed separately, and
Sure,
that's a traffic commission issue.
Okay.
Those kinds of considerations occur once housing is built and you realize where you do need stop signs sometimes, or where other traffic mitigation issues might arise. But they don't arise here internally in a neighborhood as we propose it or as it's presented to us.
Although, to answer your question specifically, no, I don't think you can expect the city to do that. It would be something that you would have to request, and they would make a determination about it. They won't just come along and plop one down there.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason Kendrick.
Good afternoon. Jason Kendrick. I live at 12832 Northwest 5th, which is the third house in Shirlea off of 5th Street, right by the park. I couldn't have said it better myself, what they said. I don't even know these people, but what they said to you today was exactly what I was going to present to you. I knew that when I moved into this neighborhood a year ago that they would eventually build. I'm okay with that. I don't want to debate with them about it, but the size of the plots and the houses that they're building is really disappointing. It's like a blackhead pimple on that beautiful land behind our house. I think they could do a better job of deciding to build bigger houses that would strengthen or increase the value of my house. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. David?
I can briefly address the zoning. As the Planning Commission will remember, this is a bit of a strange scenario in that when we zoned this for PUD 1540, we weren't going from agricultural land to a dense PUD. We had this very strange situation where we were going from a very dense PUD that allowed for multifamily, duplex, high-density, single-family, to basically the same thing that we zoned. We just rearranged it, and we now have an opportunity to have this very intricate, nice trail system running through the middle to hopefully correct maybe any drainage problems. But the density issue is one that was already in place years and years ago. I think it was the early 2000s when the density was established. So I just want to make sure that the Planning Commission was aware of that. We're happy to answer any other questions that may have come up.
Mike?
I don't have anything else. If nobody else does, I'll move it along. Now, we're going to delete 4 and 6. Were there any additional changes to TEs, or just deleting 4 and 6?
Correct.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, I'll move approval of the application deleting TEs 4 and 6.
Chairman, I'll second the motion. I'll also note that most of what I heard from the protesters does not apply to this application because it's a plat. It would have applied to the zoning application when the PUD was established. And I know you guys don't want to hear that you're late getting here, but the time to raise those issues would have been back at the time that this PUD was put into place and not at this platting stage. And I do recall when we approved the plat that this was a very dense pice of property before.
The distinction Commissioner Gales is making is that when we considered the PUD, that was the rezoning of the land. Now we're just determining where things go on it in accordance with the zoning. I'm sorry? I can't hear you. August of this year.
So the neighboring communities are not required to...
Wait, can you come to the microphone, and that way your comments are recorded?
I'm just wanting you to know, I received a notice of hearing for this event. I did not receive a notice of hearing for any other event that would have affected neighboring property that would drive through my neighborhood. I did receive this notice of hearing, therefore I'm here today.
I would have expected you to receive it. You're within 300 feet of the property, you and all of your neighbors probably. David, can you help us?
I can try. We did have multiple meetings with multiple neighbors in her neighborhood that received notice last summer, late spring into summer. We had a group from the neighborhood to the north as well as to the neighborhood to the west. I would assume that the notice sent by the city would have been the exact same, so I can't clear up any confusion there, other than just to note we did have multiple conversations with her neighbors during the zoning process.
When you say summer, I'm sorry, summer 2014?
This year.
14?
This year.
Okay.
This year.
Okay.
And just
Thank you for coming down.
Claire, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry we can't address your concerns at this stage. It's just we're past that point here.
So on a PUD, though, I would not have received a notice in the mail that, by the way, you're about to be affected?
I'm guessing you should have. That's all I can tell you. I don't know what happened with the U.S. Mail, but you should have received notice.
Thank you.
And just as a clarification question for staff, when the notices go, isn't the same list used for the plats as for the PUD when they're that close together?
They would be required to bring in a new updated list for the plat. And I assume they're fairly new to the neighborhood. They get the list from the county assessor, so we get what the county has. So if you weren't updated at the county, we may not have got your name if you're fairly new.
He is way further up the street from me, so I don't think it was a postal issue because he also did not receive a notice.
If he's beyond 300 feet of the property line, he would not have received notice directly. That's statute.
But
pardon?
Well, it doesn't matter. But I am on the south row of houses of that property, so I should have received it and didn't receive it.
We can't explain why you didn't. We're sorry. But as J.J. said, the list comes from the county courthouse, and that's what the city uses to do the mailings.
Just for the record, we would have been here to fight that. That's way too distant now. If you guys...
It's too late. We're sorry. We can't help you on that. We can't do anything about it now.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this issue,
Yeah.
as I recall, the zoning that was in place before actually was more dense than what this is. It provided for apartment houses there on that land, as well as duplexes. They actually are reducing the density that was there before. That is one of the reasons when we heard it in August that we approved this much density. They were actually cutting the density and we're not building apartment houses.
We're ready. We have to approve. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 27, SP 475, application by Ray Hibdon's Car Choice for a special permit for automobile sales located at 1414 West I-240 Service Road.
Afternoon.
My name is Steve Matheny. I represent the applicant, Ray Hibden's Car Choice. As the staff report reflects, the application satisfies all the general conditions for granting the special permit. This property is zoned C3 and entirely surrounded by C3 zone property. There are two specific conditions that the staff imposes as a condition to the granting of the special permit. We're in total agreement with those, including closing access to Kentucky Avenue off. We've already contracted with a paving contractor licensed by the city to remove the approach entirely and recurb Kentucky in accordance with city street specifications at no inconsiderable expense to us. The access, consequently, from this site will be entirely to the one-way eastbound frontage road, which will render traffic coming from this site impossible to access Kentucky unless a big loop's made through the retail that surrounds the property. The owner of the retail is in support of this application, has submitted a letter consenting to the application. I will also state, just for the record, that this is a 18,000 square foot site. It's rather large, or rather small site, less than 1/2 an acre. The existing building was formerly used as a Wendy's, which did generate considerable traffic. The existing access off Kentucky was used as their drive-through at the rear of the property. We're going to use the same footprint. The building will not be enlarged. The height of the building will not be increased. We are going to spend, however, about $75,000 to $80,000 upgrading the site and the building, both exterior and interior, to make the building much more presentable than it is currently.
No one signed up, Commissioners.
I'll just tell you, I'm not going to be able to support this based on where it's located. I certainly realize that I may stand alone, know this Wendy's, former Wendy's location well. It just doesn't seem to fit to me. I'm not going to be in support of this application.
I'll tell you what, that building is in terrible shape. That's an albatross when you go by, look at it, and I'm sure from what I've seen that they've done on different sites that they will very much improve that corner.
Well, but this is my comment. Why isn't this an SPUD? So that we know what they're doing, so that we know what the landscape is. This is an appearance corridor, so I'm just curious why this wouldn't be recommended by the staff to be an SPUD so we know what they're going to do with this, you're right, with this building that's not worth looking at.
What was the present zoning on? I thought it was
C3. C3.
C3.
And the ordinance allows for car sales in C3. It's eligible with a special permit.
Yeah.
And one of the things we normally look at in that context, and that was going to be my question, what's the proximity of other car lots?
Eskridge is located within about 1/3 of a mile east.
On the east side?
On the west side of Pennsylvania. There are then both on in the mile from Western to Santa Fe. There are at least 14 other car lots, both on the south side and the north side, not to mention a Hibden's Tire Center, Mako Equipment.
The one closest to you is the Eskridge, and it's a dealership. I'm asking about, this is a car lot, okay? And there's a difference. And that was my only question. I don't see any in the immediate area, real car lots. I see them on down the road farther. But it looks like we're starting a car lot game right there.
But I didn't get an answer. Why couldn't this be an SPUD?
It could, but the ordinance allows for a special permit, that he's eligible to apply for a special permit to establish this one use.
But our obligation in granting the special permit would encompass, like you're saying, Jim, that building is a real bad building. You know, that was, and so why wouldn't that just go further if we have some issues about the architecture or the appearance corridor issues, go further, that while the ordinance says with a special permit that's granted only by the Planning Commission, you might come in with an SPUD to tell us what it is that's going to look like after you get your special permit.
Well, there's a couple of issues there, if I might inject. First of all, this is a leased property, and the owner will not concede the C3 zoning.
No, I'm not asking for anything other than a C3, but I'm asking what it is that when you renovate the building or what you do with landscaping, and I understand that there's 2 pole signs on the property. I mean, that's what it looks like on the map.
One pole sign.
One pole sign, you know, that, and then, you know, what would you do with that pole sign? Would you put EMD flashing lights on it?
No flashing lights, no.
But that's kind of my point of this appearance corridor issue.
Well, that building is a brick building, and I think it was an old Wendy's, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And, you know, I mean, as far as the brick and the structure of the building is fine, but the facade is falling off of it, and I'm sure there's probably roof leaking and everything else in that building.
We're going to have to completely re-roof, HVAC, facade. There's actually, it's scrubby, but there's more landscaping on this site, as small as it is, than really virtually the entire retail area, east, west, and south of this site. But there will be additional landscaping. Now, what we were told, and not to rely on someone else, but when we filed the application, because we did meet the general conditions,
right.
We were told we were not required at that point to even submit a site plan other than just a layout of the site. I have agreed, as of this morning, we'll stipulate for the record that we will provide a site plan for review by council if this matter is approved, which will address some of the issues that you're mentioning.
If you have specific concerns, you can not impose, but you can request certain improvements or conditions with a special permit, the same as you could with a SPUD. You can address signage, building facade, if the applicant will agree, just like an SPUD.
To Mr. Matheny's point,
then there's going to be
it won't happen.
A give and take.
I mean, due respect to your client, it sounds like the applicant may desire to do certain things, but
the
property owner,
somebody different,
would most likely not agree to the imposition of an SPUD, potentially. And so, I mean, if that's what we want, that's certainly we can have it that way, right? There's certainly, but I think to Mr. Matheny's point, he's unable to agree to those conditions because he doesn't own the property.
I would also say if you've driven the area, the immediate area, the structures that are there, the commercial structures, are generally in fair to poor condition. And this honestly will be an upgrade over what exists if you're familiar with other sites that this family has developed throughout the Oklahoma City area.
Just make it better. That's what I have to say.
I'll stick with what I said. I just not, this is not the appropriate place for a car lot. This is not, do not even compare this to Eskridge if you've seen the Eskridge Honda. It is a very nice, has covered some of the parking where the cars are parked is covered. Even as you go down to Key, across the street, across 240 to Fowler or Express Credit Auto or David Stanley. Again, this is not comparison. This is what you see on the corner at 59th and Western or on 39th, and it is not being degrading towards those sites. It just doesn't fit here, in my opinion.
Is that a motion?
I'll not make a motion, but I'll make my feelings known.
Any further discussion or motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the application.
Okay, to vote yes is to deny the motion. Cast your votes. It is denied. Thank you. That concludes the public hearing items, and it's now, I don't know why we ask about planning commission committees anymore. There aren't any. Planning commission members, any discussion?
I have a question. I didn't want to raise this at the time because I didn't want to make it seem as though I was picking on poor Mr. Box. But
He's hanging around to hear.
On the, it's kind of good that he's still here. On the application that we had concerning the half-acre lots and whether or not that's really rural and so on, I note on that particular application that it has city sewer and water. And so I really would like to sort of pursue that question a little bit and ask, I mean, do we have any correlation between those things that is part of our policy consideration? I mean, if a property has water and sewer, does that somehow disqualify it as being considered rural, or on the other hand, should it? And you know, just ask, I guess, all of you, sort of how you feel about that, and whether it's something that we ought to talk about and think about a little bit more.
Well, where I live is Glen Eagles, which Dave is familiar with. They're half-acre lots, curb and gutter, water and sewer. I don't consider for a moment that I live in a rural setting. And because my neighborhood was essentially developed before 2004 when sidewalks became a requirement, it doesn't have them. But if you look at my neighborhood, drive through it, and if you were to think about developing it today, there'd be sidewalks. You would consider it an essentially suburban development. It doesn't feel rural in any sense. And I think you raise an interesting point that we should be considering.
I agree, but I think there's also some other characteristics that you have to look at. You've heard me complain for years about what I call urban development densities in rural areas on septic systems and things like that. I think you can design a community with a rural nature, if you wish. I'm not necessarily a fan of it. For example, without curb and gutter, open ditches and do that and bring the density up, as long as you do have those things you're talking about, Janice, water and sewer. By the same token, like John, I live on a lot that's almost an acre, just about a tenth of an acre, less than an acre, less than a tenth. I consider myself, at this point, living in the middle of town with a collector street in front of me, curb and gutter, in a subdivision. There's nothing rural about it. So I think it's a lot characteristic, but I do believe you need, if you're going to support these densities, you need some service, not a septic tank and a well.
But then if we provide those services, is it really appropriate? And you know, are we going to leave it strictly to the market to determine whether we require things like curb and gutter? I mean, is there a trade-off there that you know we need to, I don't know, impose is probably the word I would choose, but I mean, are there standards
I believe there's a concerted effort along those lines in some of the initiatives in the new plan draft we have, and the compatibility tables and things like that. The application you were referring to that Mr. Box had today, my concern was not that the density was too dense because it did have water and sewer, but that it might be too dense from a compatibility standpoint of what was around it. I wasn't concerned about its rural character that they were building it to necessarily. I was just concerned with compatibility, and that was addressed. So I think you need to look at all that.
Janice, you need to hit your button.
Looking at all that, I mean, is it just strictly a case by case, or do we have some guidelines that say if you've got this, this, and this, then it needs to be that? Or, I mean, is it really just so entirely left to the? And I totally get that the surrounding area is a big piece of that consideration, big component that has to be considered. But I guess as we have these things come before us, I'm not quite as, I live close in, and I'm not quite as familiar with some of these areas as those of you whose wards are out there further. And so it's helpful to me to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think we need a standard other than the applicant saying, well, this is going to be rural.
Right.
Or I think I'm doing a suburban development. And yet, if we drive through them after they're constructed, we're going to look at them and can't tell them apart.
Well, again, I think there's an effort
in the plan, hopefully.
The development of the new plan. But even if all that comes together, I think it's still going to require some of our judgment, if you will, on some of those applications.
And I guess part of what I'm saying is that as those applications come to us, I would appreciate hearing from you all who are most affected in your areas about how that judgment is made by you.
Okay.
I've got a comment. I'm glad to be back, and I wish a happy Thanksgiving to all of the fellow planning commissioners, to the staff, to the municipal councilor's office.
Mr. Box.
And to Mr. Box particularly, that I hope your holidays are safe and happy and full of Thanksgiving for what we have.
Planning department. We don't have a planning department today, do we, sort of? How about development services? That gives you a shot. Nothing? And you too, nothing? Mr. Box, anything? We're delighted that you stayed.
Now, the application you're referring to did not have sewer.
I know. That's another thing that concerns me, is that sewers on lots that small is something that I think we need to address in a subdivision regulation so that the city has some control over that more than we do now. Because I can tell you, having my own aerobic system, not here, but somewhere else, that it takes a decent amount of real estate to have one that actually functions properly. And if Mr. Allen was still here, he'd give us an earful on septic systems and the issues that arise in areas where they use them. Municipal councilor. Oh, darn. Okay, citizens to be heard, we have none. Other new business or anything? And then we're adjourned at 3:39. How about that?